Welcome to Cultivated Live for Tuesday, April 16th. I'm Jay Rosenthal, the co-founder of Cultivated Media and the host of Cultivated Live. And since we launched, our goal at Cultivated has been to be cannabis industry first, providing you with the most important, insightful, and useful information. We do that through our daily newsletter, Cultivated Daily. We do that through our daily live stream, which you're watching, Cultivated Live. We'd love for you to follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our daily newsletter. All of those links are below. Today, as in all Tuesdays, we are joined by Brad Spirrison from Grown In, who is coming back from travel last week to Atlantic City. How was it, Brad?
Atlantic City was wonderful. There was a
I bet.
VC panel
where
9 investors, early stage, all said, well, of course, we're waiting on rescheduling. And in the meantime, they almost got into a battle royale over hemp-infused THC.
Yeah, we'll do. Maybe we'll do a whole show about that. But you and I on Tuesdays talk United States of cannabis.
Yeah,
the intersection of cannabis and politics and policy. We're going to have a great show coming up after we get through the news from our friends in New Hampshire to talk about what's going on there. It's been a busy news week in New Hampshire, so we'll get to that in a sec. But are you ready to get to the news? I even have some interstitial videos for us today. Are you ready for this?
I love me some interstitials.
Okay, let's get to it. First, new research was published in the Journal of American Medical Association Pediatrics, which found that teen cannabis use does not spike when adult use cannabis becomes legal. Obviously, this is one of the key arguments against legalization, most recently by Virginia Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin, is that legalization of cannabis leads to teen usage. This research refutes that oft-used claim. As Marijuana Moment noted, the results of the study reinforce previous findings that legalizing and regulating marijuana for adults typically does not increase youth use of the substance, contrary to what opponents of the policy change often argue. Brad, I have to wonder, because I'm a quasi-conspiracy theorist, that this research being published, another thing we're going to talk about that happened at the White House, is this a prelude both to 420 but also to rescheduling, please?
I very much hope it is. And, you know, even if it's not, at the very least, what we're doing is disputing conventional wisdom, or at least convenient conventional wisdom brought on, the side of don't let the plants become free, by saying that, this will increase minor usage. Cannabis will be a gateway substance to everything else. Right now, the more we get actual science looking at the plant, the more we can dispute and refute all of these claims that we just, again, accepted as truth, even though there was no scientific basis for it.
I agree. And it's good fodder for our side on this. And I said in the newsletter today that I think hopefully this research is being printed out and hand delivered to regulators, other researchers, legislators throughout both DC and other places as well. But one of the places where this type of information is going to be needed is Florida. And there's some new polling out of Florida conducted by USA Today and Ipsos showing that the 2 Florida ballot measures on the November 2024 ballot, one legalizing cannabis, the other around abortion rights, both face an uphill battle to reach the 60% threshold. Just to remind you, that April 1st, the 2 ballot measures were given the go-ahead by the Florida State Supreme Court. Now, as we know, not helping the cause at all, Governor Ron DeSantis has called the legalization measure radical and added this: I've gone to some of the cities that have had this, and everywhere it smells. I don't want to walk in front of shops and have this. I don't want every hotel to really smell. We know that is a really silly argument, as well as the teen usage one. But I hope both sides, but certainly on the cannabis side, they will use this to raise money and organize. But this makes me nervous.
It's a steep hill to climb, not going to lie, but talking to folks that are in town for Benzinga, and then just keeping in touch with my Florida contacts, I think that there's quiet confidence that enough mobilization is going to occur between now and November.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, not cooler heads, but I think people are certainly not focused on this particular measure in Florida. It's probably the 3rd or 4th thing they're thinking about. So by the time they do, hopefully we'll see some more yes votes, and I'm sure we'll follow what's happening there closely. But it was funny. Can I shift gears for a second? Because yesterday, I love doing that. The White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, I think that's how she pronounced her name, said that cannabis rescheduling is now in the hands of the Department of Justice. But I think that's what it has always been, or recently with the DEA. Can we just pause and let's hear what she said?
Hold on. Interstitial away.
Interstitial. Here we go.
I will give you a little bit of an update. So, as you all know, the president asked Secretary of HHS and the Attorney General to initiate the administrative process to review how marijuana is scheduled. HHS has concluded their independent review, guided by the evidence. The scheduling review is now with DOJ, and any input should be certainly directed to them at a time and in a manner they say is appropriate. So, this is a matter at this point. Now that HHS has completed their review, it's in the Department of Justice, and they can speak to where marijuana rescheduling is at this point.
Yeah, but Brad, that's not even news. The DEA is under the DOJ.
Over under. Is the over under still 420?
Right. I don't know, but it seems like she didn't need to say that. The questions that get asked in a White House press conference are pretty staged, to be honest. So it is interesting that question got asked this week, I think. So interesting. Do you think that is interesting?
I think that we are reading tea leaves, and I think that there is a window in which it could happen this week. Joanne Caceres at Denton's, who's been on this show and who will be on Cannabis Innovation Summit tomorrow, is saying that there's a very real chance. We have not yet seen the full machinery of government start to indicate anything either way. So I am doubtful. I'm not going to bet on it, but if you're saying there's a chance, I'm gonna.
So you're saying there's a chance.
You're saying there's a chance.
Brad, I want to end on a funny note before we get to a serious conversation.
Yes.
Canada, we have a big pizza chain called Pizza Pizza, and I know that that's Little Caesars in the States, but here it's actually called Pizza Pizza. They came out with, I thought, a pretty good, not even tongue-in-cheek, but pretty fun ad in advance of 420, because we know 420 and pizza go hand in hand. Can I try to share this ad with you? I have to find it on YouTube. Hold on one sec. Let me see if I can do this. Are you ready?
Born ready.
Okay, here we go. So it's a pizza roll up, I think is what it's called, but you see the oregano. Now it's obviously very tongue in cheek. I don't even know if those things are for sale. They have the THC thing, the sticker. I thought it was clever enough to actually run today. If you know type of thing.
I mean, from paid media to earned media.
You don't have to do much to earn media on our side. But Brad, with that, this week is lots of news coming out of New Hampshire.
Yes.
We thought we'd bring the Brain Trust in New Hampshire together again on this show. Joining us in a moment, we have State Representative Anita Burroughs. We have State Representative Erica Layon. We have former State Representative Tim Egan, as well as advisor to the New Hampshire Cannabis Association, and Daryl Eames, founder of the New Hampshire Cannabis Association. You ready to bring these fine folks up?
Let's roll.
Let's roll. Great. Everybody is unmuted, which is a good start. Thank you all for being here. Many of you for the second time, but Representative Layon for the first time. Thank you so much for being here. Can we start with you?
Sure, we can. Thanks so much for having us on. And I kind of love that Brad before was quoting Dumb and Dumber then. That's what we have going on here in New Hampshire. So we have a chance.
Well, I will start there because as you weren't with us the last time, but everybody, the other three who are here gave, I don't like using the word mad props. It makes me sound like a high school kid, but or maybe a high school kid 10 years ago. Mad props to you for the work you're doing on the bill. Give us an update from your perspective of where things stand, and then we'll sort of dive deeper into what might happen next, I guess.
So where we stand is we sort of have all these different groups in New Hampshire. We have the governor and one of the senators that have their ideal model of how they're going to control the whole market. Then you have people that just want anything. They don't care. There's the people that want nothing to do with cannabis. And then you have all those people in the middle who are trying to decide the right way to do it. We had enough people that we passed our bill, but we lost like 40 people since we left a more free market model that we had last year. We picked up about 13. But I know a lot of those people aren't going to buy into this whole super government controlled version that Senator Abbas likes, because they want to do things like set agreements in private and set prices. And I frankly don't think that that'll pass the House if it comes back to us. So right now we're trying to figure out how to do that little dance, get the people together in the Senate, get the people in the House still saying, hey guys, if you go too far, you're going to lose us. And try and figure out how we actually can bring this over the finish line this year, because this has been an issue long before I got involved in the legislature. But I really think we have a good chance of getting it done this year, but that's only if everybody actually listens to each other. Yeah. And I'm an annoying one forcing those conversations as best I can.
Well, we read what you say, and I know you're forcing those conversations, whether they happen in a closed door meeting or a walk and talk, as sometimes it may be. Representative Burroughs, I want to go to you because one of the groups that I think Representative Layon didn't mention is the people that you said were was a conga line crossing the border every day to buy product. Right. And I think that's sort of the part of the pressure that is happening too in New Hampshire, is that people are buying legal cannabis at border states. Talk a little bit about that. And obviously that continues, but maybe as the season ticks up and 420 this weekend, like the conga line might get bigger, stronger, and longer.
Yeah, before I answer that, I'd like to say you referred to us as the New Hampshire Brain Trust. And if that's the case, New Hampshire is in deep trouble. So on that note,
I don't think so.
In terms of the conga line, I've had people say to me that if there's a state model and they're going to be forced to buy specific products in franchise McDonald's stores, they're still going to cross the border, because they don't want to be part of that culture. They want to have the cannabis culture that they're used to in some of these stores that, if you've been into any of them, they're really well run. The people behind the counters know what they're doing. And people like who they're buying from. So yeah. I think New Hampshire has already given up revenue to people who are going to continue to be loyal to those stores.
Yeah, there's some good weed in some of those, in all three of the states that border. Mm-hmm. But Daryl, may I go to you? Because last time we talked, you laid out some of the key challenges with a more government-centric run cannabis approach in New Hampshire. One was about sort of a franchise model. One was about the state actually being the store owners. Give us the frame in which, in this case, the Senate is looking at these things, and are these arguments making a dent with some of those folks to say, what, maybe the House is right? Maybe
I hope they are. This was much more nefarious than we thought. After the podcast, I went back and read that bill a couple of times, and we're not talking about franchise versus state-run versus agency versus free market. We're talking about the complete takeover of the industry by the state, top-down control of the means of production, the Liquor Commission with their hands and everything up and down the supply chain with a veneer of a few franchisees out front to say, hey, this is really a public-private participation. And their vision, and the reason they only wanted 15 stores to begin with, is they want these big metal and concrete warehouses in 15 locations and to be, as they said themselves, the McDonald's of cannabis. Who in cannabis wants the McDonald's of cannabis? Nobody. It is literally the Walmartization of cannabis by the state. And so it was much more nefarious, and we're hoping that we're starting to get through to them to realize, hey, the franchise and the agency model are actually kind of related in that they envision the state as the regulator, directly regulating the industry via the Liquor Commission that reports to them. Where they separate is in all of this other operating control, where the Liquor Commission is the business, which means the state is the business. And so that's the big problem we're trying to avoid. And one of the brilliant things that came out of this was Representative Layon actually separating those two items to say, if these are ever problematic, and let's say they do change the A word to the F word in the Senate, and the worst happens, we can actually just separate that out, and then there's another path to go down. So we're hoping that they see the genius in this, and we're hoping they understand the risks with the franchise model and why that should not be here. But that's not the conversation. That's just the word they're using to kind of obfuscate what they're trying to do with this complete state takeover.
Yeah. Daryl, can I go to you, because you've been in this a long time? I know you have gray hair, but I know you're just in your 40s. But I wanted to ask, zoom out a little bit to give us the landscape, because you've seen this a number of times, presumably. Like, what do you expect to have happen next? Is the Senate going to pass a bill that is not acceptable to the House? Is the governor going to look at it and say, yeah, you're like, what do you expect to have happen over the next, I don't even know the timeline. Give us the timeline as well. What do you expect to happen over the near term from our outside observer perspective?
You said Daryl, did you mean Tim?
Oh, sorry. I meant Tim. Sorry.
I thought so.
You're both 40.
Yeah. Huh?
You're both in your 40s. It's good.
I was in my 40s 20 years ago, brother. So, wow. It's, so it's 2024. I finished my second term in 2022, and I said on the House floor in testifying begrudgingly for a state-run bill by then Representative Abbas, I said, it's been 4 years I've been in the House, and in that time, Massachusetts has made, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we're still sitting here trying to figure out how to create legalization. So what we've learned is a few things. We've learned what the state wants and what the state doesn't want. We've tried to figure out what are the best practices from other states around us, trying to factor in. And I have to reference always our great New Hampshire board member, Riley Kirk, who talks about the cannabis culture, the craft cannabis culture that exists in Vermont and exists in Maine. That was referenced earlier. That's an important part of what's got to come into play here. But we've also realized that, we're in a purple state with a lot of sort of controlling interests. And the Liquor Commission is this 800-pound gorilla that likes to see how they manage revenue for the state. And something that was very telling at our finance committee hearing on this bill was the liquor commissioner said, well, we ran the numbers on cannabis sales in Maine and Massachusetts during dry January, and the amount of cannabis sales went up higher in those states where liquor sales went down. So he goes, so this is a business we want to be in. Every other state in the nation that has legal adult rec looks at it from a sort of quasi-public community engagement agency, right? The commission in Vermont or in Maine or in Mass that I've dealt with, or in Colorado. This one was like, it's what Daryl was talking about. It's business, it's Walmart. And so our concern and our sort of fight of my colleagues here are, we understand that there's going to be some type of business structure in the state, but we're not just going to fold over the fence and give up on patients, consumers, small cultivators, small entrepreneurs. I mean, that's if New Hampshire is known as a small business state, we have to sort of hold true to that. And when it comes to sort of push comes to shove, we have to be able to say, here are some things that have to allow the business to grow organically, not just let it be something that's overseen by the Liquor Commission and the way that they deal with big liquor companies, which is the corporatization of an industry. So, it's a fight that's going to go on. I think, Representative Erica referenced, the number of votes. This House bill passed 239 to 136. First of all, there were 25 folks who weren't even voting. So, right, we have a 400-person House of Representatives. So that's important to know that there's a margin of error of folks that we lost to a sort of a business franchise model. There were a bunch of folks that weren't there. So if for some reason there is some type of negotiation in the Senate and a Senate bill does pass, it's going to have to come back to the House. And the House we got to make sure that we can get the House to concur, really, to say, yes, we'll vote, because that's the process here in New Hampshire. We pass a bill out of the House, it goes over to the Senate votes on it. If they change it a lot, it has to come back to the House. If they can't really agree, then they create what they call a committee of conference. And none of us, I think, want committee of conference, because what happens is the Speaker and the Senate President pick specific legislators to be on that committee of conference, and both the Speaker and the Senate President are anti-cannabis folks. So we want to stay away from committee of conference. We want to be able to have it be concurred through the House and make sure that we have the votes in the House. So in sort of giving you the handicapping, all that's got to happen before like the middle of May or the end of May, right? The Senate has to sign off on all their bills by, I think, the second week in May. So, by the end of May, we're going to know what's coming back to the House and whether we're all going to celebrate, 6/20 instead of 4/20, June 20th. So there's something else I want to mention that I think is really important that I learned at NECAN in Boston. And if it's okay, I give NECAN a shout out because here at Vermont State University, we participate in their Vermont event and participate in their Boston event. But when people say to me, like, okay, I'm not a big cannabis fan and isn't cannabis bad? Every state in the nation, and I learned this at NECAN, every state in the nation that has legal adult cannabis use sees opioid morbidity go down 25%, which means, in the state of New Hampshire, and I bring this up because opioid crisis was a big factor that is making a lot of our representatives be fearful of cannabis here in New Hampshire. So we're trying to educate them that, look, cannabis is not a gateway drug. In fact, it's an exit drug for more harmful addictive painkillers that corporatization, see, Daryl, I have you in mind, has been forcing on us, the pharma industry. So those are important things that we try to educate. So in this process, and I'm pontificating, but I'll stop, which is, we're trying to basically say, look, cannabis is not the evil that you see it is. It's not something that's going to wreck our society or as the chiefs say in New Hampshire, oh, it's going to create more accidents. Well, if people are buying it to the tune of $40 to $60 million a year in Mass, Vermont, and Maine and driving it back, and the accident rates have not gone up, then that's not happening. And at the end of the day, when we look at, what this all means in our bill, in this bill that the representatives put together, which got tweaked out and we're going to try and tweak back in, we want a percentage of the revenue to go towards education funding. It's the number one cost to property taxpayers in the state of New Hampshire. So this is not a panacea like, hey, cannabis is going to solve all our problems. But it's a problem, and we have to find a solution. And what good governance is finding solutions to problems. And that's why I will stand in front of traffic for Representatives Layon and Burroughs because of what they're doing. They're trying to make something good happen here. And so that's sort of the big picture of where we're at, where we were, where we're going, and I think why we're trying to be so aggressive moving forward. I hope that was helpful.
It is helpful, I think. And I want to shift just ever so slightly because it isn't often, and this is a testament to both representatives here, that you're not on the same side of the aisle, as far as I can tell, but you are working on this issue. And I want to ask a political question, if that's okay. Sort of, how do the politics break down? And is it different in the House versus the Senate versus the governor? And I guess maybe zoom out a little bit, like, are there lessons to learn for both of you that you could outsource too? Because we've seen some governors standing very strongly against cannabis in Virginia and in Florida, and not so strongly, I guess, in New Hampshire yet. But talk a little about sort of that, the political lessons to be learned from both of your perspectives, being on different sides of the aisle. We'll start with Representative Layon.
Thank you. Actually, when Tim was talking about standing in front of traffic, I had to get a chuckle. We are in an almost evenly divided House. And the first time that I actually met and talked with Representative Burroughs was when we were doing a site tour out in Maine. And I said, quick, we need to walk together so that if they hit one of us, they hit both of us. And both sides will be down the same amount.
I love that.
And I just think that that's kind of a good explanation of where we are. But, it's been an issue where I think that when it gets roll called, you get more Democrats that may not otherwise support it voting for it. And you may get some Republicans that would support it without a roll call, not supporting it because their name is listed because of their district and whatnot. And in the Senate, we have 9 of the 10 Democrat senators are generally on board, depending on the details. It's been a lot harder to get the Republicans. But one of the big issues is I keep pointing out that just about anybody who wants cannabis in New Hampshire can get it now. They're either driving out of state or they're getting questionable products. And this idea that people who want it already are getting it seems to be getting some resonance. And if I get more of that information about reducing opioids, I think that's really going to give us a lot easier path to approval because opioids have been such a problem in New Hampshire. I mean, in my town, we had somebody talking about how they were so disappointed that they couldn't convince kids that marijuana was just as dangerous as heroin. I'm sorry. Why do you think kids are trying heroin now? they know people that smoke marijuana. They might smoke it themselves. And if they're told it's the same as heroin, hello, McFly. There's a reason why we have more people trying it now. So I'm really hopeful that this harm reduction effort is something that works pretty well with them. And there's some people who are trying to say it is, if this doesn't pass, it's all on the Republicans. But it's not. We only had 74 Republicans that voted for the bill just the other week. But back when we had the freer market one, we had 103. We kept the Democrat support, and I really, really thank Representative Burroughs for that. We had some people that probably are already holding their nose more than they're willing to, so we'll lose them if they change anything over in the Senate. But this has been so wonderful working together with people where party's not the issue. It's about doing the right thing for the people of New Hampshire and trying to get the best model we can. This has made what should be a really hard year a really wonderful year, because I've been able to work together with such wonderful people and just really build these relationships with people, because we're all trying to get to good policy. So, I mean, there's the issue of then reaching out to other states. Governor Youngkin, I actually said in the finance committee, well, Pennsylvania has home grow. So I just trade this whole thing for home grow. We can do that. Obviously, we want to have good stores, but it's a totally different playing field when you have home grow. And I tried with Governor DeSantis. I was one of his endorsers. That's one of the things that I really disagreed with him on. But some people just can be wrong on policy, and I'll forgive him for that for now, and hopefully we'll convince him in the future.
I think it's a matter of time, not sort of entrenched stance in many of these cases, to be quite honest. And Representative Burroughs, to you, sort of looking at it from a political perspective, obviously a lot less risk, I would say, for Democrats. But how have you seen it either change or alter over the time that you've been talking about it?
Well, first, I want to say, in terms of the bipartisan effort, Eric and I have talked about it. I have a podcast, and she and I talked about this. When we started working together, I did have some Democrats say, why are you working with Erica? She voted this way on that. And I said, because we agree on this issue, and that's what we need to do. Whenever there's common ground, we need to work together. And, I've really enjoyed working with Erica. I've told her, she's taken the lead on this, and I've never seen anybody work as hard as she has. And I really have learned a lot from her. And we are trying to convert her over to our side, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. but in terms of,
go back to JFK Democrats, you might get me.
But in terms of the political right now, I think there are some Democrats who are not going along with this because of the Liquor Commission. They don't think the Liquor Commission has done a good job. They have concerns about money that was supposed to be put into a drug treatment fund that they said didn't end up going there. So there are those people I think are never going to vote for this as long as the Liquor Commission has a significant hand in this. I think there are other Democrats who are concerned about the criminal justice aspects. They want to see as little prosecution of people who smoke cannabis as possible, and some of them have dug their teeth into. We don't want to see any of that. We even had a Democrat got up on the floor who was a sponsor of the bill, arguing against it in the House, which was kind of mind blowing. But so, I think that's what's going on. But I think at the end of the day that some of the Democrats who may have voted against it last time will vote for it, as long as we don't have this McDonald's model.
Yeah. I want to thank you. And we could continue this conversation for hours and hours, but I want to get everybody on with their day, especially folks watching who we quasi promised to be out by 10:30. But I want to also quasi get your promise to come back as things continue, because I think I'm from Massachusetts, spent a lot of time in New Hampshire. My kids go to camp in New Hampshire, so I will be there this summer, and hopefully this thing will have passed. We can all celebrate together. I can get the New Hampshire Cannabis Association hockey jersey, which is now on my wish list. But I want to thank you, Representative Burroughs, Representative Layon, Tim Egan, and Daryl Eames. Thank you so much for joining us. Brad, thank you as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to say goodbye to the New Hampshire team. So thank you so much. We'll have you on again as things move forward. Daryl, thank you. Tim, thank you.
Thank you.
Layon, thank you. Anita, thank you. Brad, we're going to come. Oh, we're both back, Brad.
Yes.
To wrap things up.
Wow.
That was awesome. I really appreciate their time and love the conversation midstream, I guess, in New Hampshire. Hopefully it's midstream as things move on. Brad, you have an event tomorrow. I wanted to sort of help promote that.
Cannabis Innovation Summit, virtually. Google Cannabis Innovation Summit in 1871 or email brad@grownin.com. We have Jim Belushi as the keynote. We have concurrent breakout sessions on everything from legislation with Joanne Caceres and marketing and Cannabis Research Institute and supply chain, all the way up to a panel I'm monitoring with Leaf Trade, Hoodie Analytics, and Bot Byte AI.
Love it. Yeah, I'm going to tune in. I'm really jazzed.
Love it. Love it.
Brad, if I may, thank you all for tuning in today to Cultivated Live. Please follow us on cultivated.news, subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on LinkedIn, smash the subscribe button on YouTube, where we're getting a loyal following. So thank you for that. We'll be back here tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, with my co-founder and editor-in-chief of Cultivated, Jeremy Berke. We're going to talk all things 420. We're going to talk about the AMA stuff we talked about. We're going to talk about what the White House means when they come out and actually talk about cannabis, but restating what they've already stated before. Remember, as you get into 420, buy cannabis at your local dispensary. That helps out everybody. Brad, thank you so much. We will connect with you next week. Good luck tomorrow, sir.
Happy 420.
Happy 420.